Please introduce yourself, including your pronouns and what you want the audience to know about you.
Okay, sure. I'm Zandy. I go by Zandy because it's a nickname I had as a kid, so I prefer that as my name. And basically, I'm a VR artist and world builder and designer, and I started back in May 2019. When I first I was using VR in 2018, and I loved it. I just felt so it was just a fit, and something just clicked. And then I saw Goro Fujita doing stuff with Quill, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
whoa, that's really cool. So I was a mad girl, and so I had to get a PC. So I got a PC, and then I didn't end up going into Quill because for some reason unlit shaders for me they just don't work because I like to see the reflection of the light on objects, and with unlit shaders you don't have that. So I saw some artists using tilt brush, and I was totally amped. It's like a moth to a flame. There's no stopping you at that point, and I've been going ever since. So yeah, so in 2019, May 2019 was the first time I picked up a virtual paintbrush, and I was inspired by several artists, and this is where I am now. So one of the artists in particular, Sabby Life, she was the one that did she did dailies for a year, and she did an amazing job, and I was inspired as well as other people. So a whole bunch of us started to do painting on a more frequent basis, and it's almost it's like yoga. You go in it, and you just sometimes you'll be in for half an hour, sometimes you'll be in for several hours, depending on what you're working on. But when you become immersed in the process and not worry, I mean, you shut off everything. It's great because you shut off all of your surroundings too. Being in VR, and you just focus on the now, what you're doing now, and you just kind of release yourself, and all the emotion and so forth goes into the painting. So I started in January 2020. I started doing daily painting. So I do one painting a day. And I've been doing that for 4 years now. So this is my 4th year. And I took 2.5 weeks off only because social media, I'm not a fan of social media personally. And I post to keep myself accountable. So it's kind of like, if you had to go to the gym, for example, you go to the gym, you have a workout partner, they're going to hold you accountable, right? So it's kind of the same thing. If I don't post, I'm not going to hold myself accountable to do it daily. So it has nothing to do with competition. This is my own personal journey. And so to make myself accountable, I publish daily. Next year, I'm only going to be doing it probably once or twice a week, but I'll still be doing my dailies at home because social media, after a while, it gets to be too much. So I will be backing off on social media, but I'm not going to be backing off on painting. So the whole process, again, for me, it's releasing emotions. Some days, depending on what's going on in the day, I may have one that shows my anger. And other days it may show that I'm a jokester, so it may show something funny, or it may show something that's very emotional. And so each day that I paint, whatever I'm feeling on that day is what I paint. When there are things like themes, it makes it easier. So I encourage anyone who sees like Inktober or Sculptober and they're into art and they want to try VR art, is to try and get involved in those and try it for 30 days and see how you feel. Because the themes actually, when the themes come, it's a relief for me because I don't have to think about what to paint because I follow the theme daily. So it's very helpful for people who want to try and get involved in that and to try it out and see if it's for them. But what's cool is everything that you create, you can use it to build worlds, you can use it to build product, and patterns and digital assets that you can sell, or you can just do it for fun. So I highly encourage everybody to try.
Can you explain what dailies are and why you do them?
It's emotion. It's an emotion, 100% emotional for me. So, when I do dailies, I paint a different thing each day. Sometimes I know what I want to paint. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes the first 15 minutes I go in, I'm just moving my brush strokes around, just kind of getting a feel of what I'm gonna do, and then it clicks. So sometimes I use reference photos, and sometimes I don't. But again, it's all based on interpretation of life experiences. So it's pretty intimate when you think about it, because if you think of any artist that puts their heart and soul into something, you feel the art when you look at it. Or when you're listening to music, when they put their heart and soul into the music, you feel the music. That's the whole thing. So for me, my daily practice is like, this is my yoga. So I spend on average about an hour doing stuff. Sometimes I want to stay in longer. And that's the other thing too, that it's one of the things that in the art world that I am not a fan of, is when people say, try and do as much as you can in a short amount of time. No, you need to, all those emotions, you need to feel those emotions as they come out. If it takes you 5 hours, it takes you 5 hours. Over time, the more you do, the better you're gonna get, because you're doing it every day. I see a change in my art since when I started to now, and it has to do with practice. So when I get in, I throw the music on loud. I mean, you don't see when it's probably a good thing people aren't seeing what I'm doing while I paint, because I've got the music blaring, and then all of a sudden some tunes on it, like if it's a rock tune, all of a sudden I'm like this inside while I'm painting in between. So singing along to it, whatever the case may be. But it's all, for me, it's emotion. So everything I paint has to do with what I'm feeling. So my goal as an artist is, when I do these dailies, I want people to look at it, but not just look at it. I want you to feel. That's the ultimate goal. So when you look at different things, which ones are you drawn to, and look at the piece, and maybe you see something in there that is actually reflecting on you as well, which is what art is all about, right? So art without any heart isn't art to me. It has to come from here, because it's very intimate. So any artist that you see, like, and even any world builder, if you think about it, they're building a worlds based on what's in here and here. So what they envision, it could be something, as when you're a kid, you always wanted to go to a certain place. So whoever creates the world, it's part of them. It's very intimate, and I don't think people realize that. So because you're looking into the psyche of the person that's creating the world. Just by being in it, and then it invokes emotion. So whether you're going to a rave, or you're going to an art world, or you're going to play some games, all of those are, the whole point is it's bringing out emotions in you and feelings. So you can feel amped, you can feel bored, you can feel inspired, depending on what world you go into and what relates to you. So I think that's a true connection. It's a real intimate connection when you go into these VR worlds, because again, it's not just somebody making the world. You're looking inside of that person's soul, basically, of what they're feeling and what they want other people to experience, which is pretty wild. And people only are being exposed to you from what's in here, because they don't see your persona. They don't see you as you would in the real world. So I find there's less prejudice, there's less other stuff going on, because you're seeing the person for who they are.
What inspires you to share your dailies, and how do you decide what to show or combine into certain worlds?
It's usually based on a theme, and a lot of my worlds have a healing aspect to it, whether you realize it or not. Even if you think of the Halloween world, some people may think that sitting around with the candles or around the fire is a place of comfort, right? So, like Fire and Ice is a real popular world that I published, and in there I have the healing caves. I have the opal caves, which is this type of atmosphere. Magical forest is the same sort of thing. So it's there's always a calming, whether it's the music even psychedelic trance. It's got some calming aspects to it, and the reason being is because I want people to feel safe, and I want them to deal with their emotions in a way that is a positive way, and have fun and enjoy themselves at the same time. When I come up with the worlds, I usually have a theme. It usually happens when I have enough pieces that I think would go together well. Sometimes they're individual pieces. And I also have some that I've recently pulled from VR chat, but I can always upload them again. But they're pieces that are close to my heart. I did a historical masterpiece series. Certain things were going on at certain times when I was painting them. Like the Sagrada Familia, I did the entire interior. Every single piece of stained glass is different in the entire cathedral. And that took me 23 days, but it was one of those times where you have a lot of stuff going on and you need to release that. So I painted for like probably 8-10 hours straight for 23 days. And I broke it up, like I had a break in between. But it's the entire interior, so the interior of La Sagrada Familia. It's not it's not just a piece of it, it's the entire thing. But those were times where I needed to get into that mode and release those feelings. And so I poured it into the art. I will share, I'll probably have maybe 1 or 2 worlds next year. I'm going to be backing off because I've got other projects that I'm going to be working on.
Given your daily creative process, how do you pace yourself to avoid burnout?
I can still do art every day, no problem. The social media bit I get burnt out on. And the reason being is because there's lots of outside noise, lots of negativity. So I think to avoid burnout, if anyone's interested in doing a daily, is to focus on your why you're doing it. There will always be somebody better than you. And you can't compare yourself to others because it's a process. So even if you think of when I started to now, I've evolved over time. I can do things a lot faster than I did when I first started. But again, my reasons for painting are different from other people's reasons for painting. I think if you are just painting to get the end result and to make money off of it, that's fine and dandy, but you're going to burn out because you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You always want to make sure that you are focusing on why you're doing what you're doing, drown out the outside noises. And unfortunately, the more you do, the more static you get, believe it or not. And I think it's because people aren't doing as much and they're comparing themselves with what I'm doing, but my journey is completely different from their journey. Mine is very personal. Do you know what I mean? So everybody's got their own personal journey, and it's really important to focus on that and focus on your own journey and drown out all that outside noise that happens. And if somebody's taking away your vibe, you need to separate yourself from that person. You've got to do things that make you happy and continue with what is true to you.
How do you optimize your worlds or choose which ones to leave as PC only? Like this world, for example.
Yeah, this one is shaders. So this particular world was for both PC and Quest. Same world. I just published it for Quest and I published it for PC. The problem is with the PC world, some of these shaders would mess things up, and I had poor performance for Quest users. And if you think about it, if you look at all of these are individual brush strokes, okay, including on top. So even the soft highlighter brush, all of that, those are all individual brush strokes. If you look at the tree over there, those are all individual brush strokes. So even though I joined, it's pulling performance on Quest users. So when I choose a Quest world, like a Magical Forest or Fire and Ice, they're very simple worlds with not crazy shaders.
How would you describe your style of art, and what would you like visitors of your world to take away from each experience?
I try and keep it true to my own style, because there are very few times that I'll actually do, replicas of different things that have already been made, or fan art or anything like that. I try and keep it unique. One of the things that I'm known for is the architectural builds and the animals that I do, as well as the trippy videos that I do as well. So those tend to be the most popular out of all of them. Again, it depends on what I'm feeling at the moment and what I'm doing as to what comes out on that day. So I think that's unique in the way that I do those, and I think that's good because every artist needs to keep to their unique style. And for the worlds, I just want people to be able to. My ultimate goal is to not only share my art, but to encourage emotion when they're in it. So that's the ultimate goal. I want them to be able to kind of interpret the world as to what they think. Maybe I was thinking while I was putting the piece together, and have their own interpretation of it and have some emotion from when they leave the world.
Do you have any worlds in AltSpace VR as well?
I'd go into AltSpace, but I didn't have any worlds in AltSpace. The reason being is because the tilt brush and open brush shaders are very unique, and the fact that sometimes some platforms the shaders won't work, even though you have the toolkit to go with it, or it's not compatible. So, or it's because of the high poly aspect of the art pieces as well. So, I mean, anything you do in open brush and tilt brush is going to be a high poly piece. There's no way around it. Because again, it's every brush stroke. It's not creating a low poly model in Blender and subdividing it and so forth. This is every single piece. Every brush stroke is going to increase your poly count like crazy.
What advice do you have for new world builders?
Don't copy somebody else and try, and because a world is popular, try and still make it something that that represents you, not somebody else. Because I think what happens with world builders too, and not just world builders, but it happens in the art world and so forth, is prime example were the apes, right? So like they came out and then everybody's doing apes.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of staying true to your own, like you should be the trendsetter. Try and stay true to your own style and your own interests and create something that you think that not only would you like, but other people would like too. I think it's really important to stay true and authentic as to who you are and show that in your worlds or your art or whatever you decide to do.
What parts of the 3D creative process could be better in your opinion?
It would be the ideal world if all of these programs work together like seamlessly. So you have certain things like geometry nodes are awesome. Like people create some really cool stuff with that. You can't bring it into Unity, make it work the same way, right? So is even the flow of things, like people don't realize that when you get technical into the world building, it's not just bringing your assets in, it's decimating your assets. And sometimes that requires me to go into Blender. It's sometimes I have to join like brushstrokes. I have to go into Blender to do that. So I can't do it all in one program. That's the biggest hurdle, I think. In an ideal world, they would seamlessly flow, no problem. Same thing with the shaders, right? So certain shaders are going to work in certain types of platforms, and it's not going to work in other platforms. It would be great if they all merged together. So you don't have to use a crazy number of programs to get the same result. I think that's the biggest frustration and time waster, really, when it comes to building worlds.
Can you explain your software workflow in more detail and how you bring your worlds into VR?
Basically, when I'm making the worlds, I have to do a couple things to them. I have to use Blender. I have to use Tilt Brush or Gravity Sketch or Open Brush, whatever. So you have your assets. You have to think of your theme and then build it around and try and envision what you would dream it to be like, and then bring it together. So the reason why I have to use different programs for the world building is, again, I can't do it in tilt brush alone. I can't do it in open brush alone. I have to combine the like brush strokes. I have to decimate where I can. You know, if it's a painted world, if I decimate it too much, I end up with holes. It's not the same as building a low poly model in Blender and decimating it, or subdividing something, decimating it. It's not the same. The big thing with tilt brush and open brush is that the draw calls are like, they're crazy, because each piece, like if you think of each daily I've done, so even if you look at these, like the banana trees, that was a daily. The couches, that was a daily. The birds of paradise, that was a daily. So each of those brush strokes, well, each of those pieces have to be combined, or else my draw calls go nuts. So that's a huge, huge challenge to VR artists. And VR art is very different than working in Blender. You have more precision and control with Blender and Maya and all of those other programs because of the nature of those programs. But when you're painting in three-dimensional space and you're bringing in those assets, you come and you have different challenges to try and increase the performance.
If you had a choice, would you rather use all these programs in VR?
Yeah, and the reason being is because I can't, like, if I used to draw a little bit here and there, 2D drawing, Procreate, great programs, okay? I would rather paint in three-dimensional space. For me, it seems more organic, you know, because it's like if you think about it, you're going to plant a plant, you're touching the plant, you're moving the plant, you know, you're interacting with the plant. It's the same thing. There's no limit to your canvas. But working in three-dimensional space for me seems so much more natural than doing it in 2D. But that's just me, you know what I mean? Like, I think if you're using 2D programs, the precision is by far better than it is in 3D. However, that's changing now. We're starting to see certain things being developed now since all of these art programs have come about. You can do a lot more with it now. And there is more precision than when I first started. Like the Trevi, for example, I did that all by eye. The snap, there was no snap. You know, the first brush stroke was a snap. That was it. You can't do anything else. So I was using all reference photos to create that, and there was no precision. So that's the downside. Or to have, say you wanted to make an asset that if you were to print it out, it'd be 5 by 10 feet. You can't. You can do that now, but you couldn't do it then because there was no tool that would help you measure real world measurement inside of 3D space. But all that's changing now. Blender now has Freebird, which is a VR plugin where you can do stuff in VR now. My biggest fear is that certain companies just limit people to Maya, you know, Blender, this and that, instead of embracing the three-dimensional programs that you can use in VR, because I think you get a different style, you get a different feel for it. It's just different. It doesn't mean that one's better than the other, but why not embrace it? Right. Since we're embracing VR and AR and all that other stuff, why not embrace all this other stuff a little bit better? You know?
How do you determine or reach a point where you're satisfied with what you've created?
I'm never satisfied with what I've created. I'm always trying to improve. It's a bit of an OCD thing, to be honest with you. I gotta learn that's one of my downfalls. I gotta learn when I need to stop and just be happy with it. A little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to certain things.
Do you have any new worlds that you're building right now that you can tell us about? When will they be ready?
At this point, I'm not going to be doing world building for a while, because I've got some other things that I'm going to be working on.
How can we stay updated on what you're creating?
Oh yeah, they can go to most of my posts actually. The Instagram's my favorite account anyway.
Uh-huh.
So Instagram, I'll post things there. I'm also on Twitter,
Uh-huh.
on X, and
Uh-huh.
so they can find out there. My store is the Unique VR Art Boutique, or you can look up just ZandyXR and you'll see it.
Uh-huh.
And that's where I have two clothing lines. One's called the Artisan Collection, and one is the Casual Collection. The Artisan Collection is very raw VR patterns that I've taken from my
Uh-huh.
artwork. So I don't alter those at all. And it's only certain select pieces that I use for that. That collection, I work with a distributor out of London, and they
Uh-huh.
hand sew everything.
Wow.
So you can choose the material you want. You can choose the hardware for pocketbooks, for example, or raincoats or anything like that. Shirts. You can choose the type of fabric you want, and they put my designs on them, and it's made to order. So that's very special.
Thinking back to creating in Blender versus OpenBrush, how do the meshes and textures work in both programs, and how do you make them work in VR?
It's built into the brush, so depending on which one it is, if I were to take this into Blender, you would see I would still have faces and vertices and so
Uh-huh.
forth, but it's built into the shader's built into the brush. And when it's exported as a GLB, all that information is there.
Okay.
So, all right, so there's a couple of things that I can do. Mesh Baker's a good one too for combining, and that's a good one. But you got to be careful again, because with these, because of how they're made, you got to be careful with decimation, because the decimation on these, it's a mess. It will make it look so bad if you go past a certain point. So combining brushstrokes is the best method in optimization for VR chat worlds or any worlds that have to do with painted pieces.
As our interview comes to a close, what words do you want to leave the audience with?
Don't give up, and try not to focus on everybody else and what they're doing. Stay true to your own art style, stay true to yourself, and everything will work out, and you won't burn out, and you'll enjoy what you're doing, and enjoy the process. Don't rush it. Even the world building, enjoy what you're doing. You can always come back and redo it, or I've redone worlds over and over. You can always come back and redo it, and as your skills improve, you can make new worlds. So just focus on your passion and go for it. That's the best advice I can give you.